What if one of the most colorful, cartoonish shows on television wasn't really meant for kids at all? South Park may look like an innocent animation about four foul-mouthed children, but behind its paper-cut style hides something darker, sharper, and way more twisted than most adult dramas. From grotesque violence to unfiltered social commentary, the show has proven again and again that it's not made for anyone under a certain age, or maybe even for anyone who can't handle chaos. These are the South Park moments that prove, once and for all, this show was never for kids. It all started with an episode so simple it fooled parents everywhere. Cartman gets an anal probe. The pilot introduced aliens, abductions, and a talking piece of feces before the end credits rolled. What looked like a silly sci-fi spoof was actually one of the most shocking premieres in TV history. Teachers and parents complained that the kids' crude language and bizarre humor made it unwatchable for children. Trey Parker and Matt Stone laughed, saying they couldn't believe anyone thought a show with anal probe in the title was family friendly. But South Park's second episode removed all doubt. Weight Gain 4000 had Cartman obsessed with body image, steroids, and a talk show host named Kathy Lee Gifford, and it ended with him screaming "beefcake" while his body inflated like a balloon. The satire was sharp, but the visuals were disturbing. Critics at the time warned that the show's appeal to kids was a trap, comparing it to an R-rated cartoon hidden under bright colors. Then came Mr. Hanky, the Christmas Poo. Yes, a literal talking piece of excrement that teaches the meaning of Christmas. The episode's message was about tolerance and commercialization, but most parents couldn't see past the singing toilet humor. Schools banned South Park merchandise. Religious groups called it disgusting. Yet adults who looked deeper realized it was actually a satire of America's obsession with political correctness during the holidays. The joke wasn't the poop, it was the people. Still, for kids watching at home, it was just a cartoon that made them laugh and horrify their parents at the same time. In 1999, the creators made it official. South Park was not for children, what with bigger, longer, and uncut. The feature-length movie opened with a song called "Shut Your Fing Face, Uncle Fair," and somehow became an Oscar-nominated film. It mocked censorship, war, and America's hypocrisy around free speech, all wrapped in profanity and violence. Kids begged to see it, parents panicked, and critics praised it as a work of genius. The movie proved the impossible. A cartoon could be both wildly offensive and deeply intelligent, if you were old enough to understand it. The show's darkest turn came in Scott Tenorman Must Die. The plot starts like a school prank and ends like a horror film. When Cartman is humiliated by an older boy, he takes revenge by tricking him into eating chili made from his own parents. It's a scene so disturbing that even longtime fans were stunned into silence. It cemented Cartman as one of TV's most evil characters, and made it very clear that South Park was operating on a whole different level of maturity. Then there was Kenny Dies, one of the rare episodes that played the story straight. Kenny's recurring deaths had always been a running gag, but this time it was real. He dies of a terminal illness, and the episode treats it with sincerity and emotional weight. Viewers cried, parents were confused. How could a show that once featured a singing turd now make people sob over a dying kid? It was a turning point. South Park wasn't just shock humor anymore. It was real storytelling, just told through chaos. In the death of Eric Cartman, the show dove even deeper into psychological territory. Cartman thinks he's dead and tries to atone for his sins, which includes every vile thing he's ever done. The montage of his apologies reminds the audience of just how cruel he's been. Animal cruelty, racism, manipulation, and betrayal. It's played for laughs, but the undertone is chilling. Kids might laugh at the slapstick. Adults realize it's a portrait of narcissism and moral decay. By the time Good Times with Weapons aired, the series was pushing television boundaries no other cartoon dared approach. The kids buy martial arts weapons at a fair, imagining themselves as anime heroes. The episode ends with Butters being impaled in the eye by a thrown shuriken. The camera cuts to him lying on the ground, bleeding, while the other kids panic. It's violent, gory, and shockingly realistic, so much so that networks nearly gave it an adults-only rating. Yet fans loved it because it revealed what made South Park unique. It showed the real consequences of childish stupidity. Then came Cartoon Wars, the infamous two-part special that mocked censorship and the media's fear of depicting Muhammad Muhammad. The network censored the Prophet's image, igniting global controversy. Adults debated freedom of speech. Kids watching at home just saw beeps, black boxes, and confusion. It was a moment that separated viewers, those who understood the satire and those who only saw the surface. The message was never meant for children. When With Apologies to Jesse Jackson aired, it opened with one of the most controversial cold opens in TV history, a slur so offensive that entire networks refused to air reruns. Yet the episode wasn't promoting hate, it was dissecting it. It used shock to force uncomfortable discussions about racism, ignorance, and how words evolve. It was the kind of satire that demands maturity to process, something no kid could fully grasp. In Make Love, Not Warcraft, the show mixed absurd comedy with existential dread. The boys become obsessed with the online game, losing touch with reality as they grow fat, pale, and sick. The humor is gross and over the top, but the underlying message about addiction and escapism is haunting. Adults saw themselves in the satire. Kids just saw poop jokes and swords. That contrast is what makes South Park dangerous and brilliant. The Imagination Land trilogy blurred the line between fantasy and trauma. It starts as a magical adventure, then spirals into terrorism, politics, and mass destruction. Characters like Jesus, the Care Bears, and terrorists all share the same battlefield. It's funny, yes, but it's also deeply disturbing. A story about how imagination can't escape reality's horrors. The violence and existential commentary are far beyond what any child could comprehend. One of the most divisive episodes ever, Raising the Bar, attacked America's obsession with celebrity culture and obesity. Cartman riding a mobility scooter became an instant meme, but the episode's critique of public health and moral decay hit harder than any late-night monologue. It was smart, mean, and brutally honest. Exactly what made South Park adult television disguised as a cartoon. Then came The Human Centipede, even saying the title makes people flinch. The episode mixed Apple's user agreements with grotesque horror, creating something almost unwatchable. Fans called it the grossest thing South Park has ever done. But beneath the disgust was a sharp message. How blindly we accept what we don't read. It was body horror turned consumer satire. In TMI, a simple joke about body measurement spiraled into a meltdown about masculinity and insecurity. Cartman's ego explodes, leading to rage therapy and social chaos. On the surface, it's absurd. Underneath, it's one of the rawest looks at male fragility on television. By the Tegrity Farms era, things got even darker. Randy Marsh's turn into a corrupt weed mogul turned a goofy dad into a mirror of greed and hypocrisy. The drug jokes, the moral rot, the violence, none of it was meant for kids. It was satire for a messed up adult world pretending to be normal. Even the pandemic special and post-COVID episodes took the show's maturity to another level. They weren't just jokes about a virus. They were reflections on isolation, misinformation, and the collapse of trust in society. South Park was now functioning like a mirror, forcing adults to see their own absurdity through the eyes of animated children. Through all of it, one thing has stayed the same: the illusion that South Park is a kids show just because it's animated. But this isn't Saturday morning TV. It's a series that has tackled politics, religion, death, addiction, identity, and human depravity in ways no live-action drama could get away with. Because South Park was never meant to be comfortable or kid-friendly. It's meant to challenge, disgust, and make you laugh at the same time. It uses the innocence of childhood to reveal the insanity of adulthood, and that's what makes it timeless. So the next time someone says, "It's just a cartoon," remember the singing poop, the cannibal chili, the human centipede, and the prophet censored from TV. South Park isn't a kid's show pretending to be for adults. It's an adult show pretending to be about kids. And that's what makes it genius, terrifying, and absolutely unforgettable.